There are moments in life where everything feels personal, when your thoughts feel absolute, where your emotions feel like truth, where the world feels like it's happening to you. And then there are moments where something shifts. You notice your reaction while you're reacting. You feel space between your trigger and your response. You realize you don't have to believe every thought you think. That movement is consciousness. Consciousness isn't mystical. It's not something you either have or don't have. It's developmental. It's the expansion of awareness. The growing distance between stimulus and response, between emotion and identity, between story and truth. Tonight we're exploring the 4 stages of consciousness. Not as labels to rank yourself, but as language that shifts what you've already experienced. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Justin Gates, and this is the New Ashla Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the New Ashla Podcast, home of self-mastery and cultivating the best self you can through consciousness practices, shadow work, and a whole bunch of other modalities we like to bring all together to help you discover your best life.
And tea drinking. Don't forget tea drinking.
Necessary evils right there.
You like my cup?
Or water.
Yeah, like my cup.
It's a symbol of your relationship. Every day is Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it was in my cupboard. That's what I found.
I know, I went for the biggest cup.
Yeah.
It's like I need more water in my system.
Water's good. Water good, Michael.
So, the 4 stages of consciousness. I thought this would be a fun topic to bring up as we're shifting our podcast more into the consciousness field.
Shifting? Is that what you said?
Shifting.
Oh.
Yeah, shift now. I see what you're thinking right there. Because it's really important to understand sort of what we hear consciousness all the time, but giving it a type of definition and a way to understand consciousness in the form of a scale is something I never really had. And when I came upon this, it's been a great way to sort of look at where I'm at any given time on this scale. And I'd like to say one thing with this. These different phases don't just apply to your life as a whole. You could be in one stage in work. You could be in a whole nother stage in your relationship. You could be in another stage in your own personal endeavors. This is not something that is specifically designed to give you, a label on your life and where you're at in consciousness.
Right.
And believe me, it is something that will shift back and forth throughout your time and your experiences.
Yeah. I like to think of it as seasons. I don't know if it's an accident. There's 4 seasons and there's four sort of like stages to consciousness, but yeah. We live in Colorado. We go through all 4 seasons every day sometimes. So
yeah. And
inside,
you know what? You'll
and
go
literally,
through the 4 stages of consciousness too.
And literally outside and inside sometimes. We'll probably get snow in June this year. Who knows? But yeah, none of the things that we talk about here are something that we should always apply as in like black and white understandings, right? Human beings are we're complex. We have lots and lots of different layers. Like old Shrek said, we're an onion. We have lots and lots of layers. So, and really, this is why we keep coming back to presence over perfection, presence over anything else, because it only matters where we're at when, it only matters where we're at the when, right? At the moment, the present. Doesn't matter how I felt earlier, because I felt a lot different earlier than I do right now. It's just the way it goes, right? So, yeah.
So with keeping that in mind, let's jump straight into what the first stage is. Now, they talk about in awakening that there are like only 15% of people are awake. Now, I think that number is shifting. I think society is moving into awareness. More and more people are waking up, and I think that number does need evaluated. That was just the last time I saw it. But 85% of people supposedly are asleep, and I think a lot of them are operating from this first stage. So the first stage is life is happening to me.
Yeah. I don't know if it's 85%, but it seems like a lot. And we've met a lot of people throughout our day that are just going through it, and they're just going through it because everything's happening to them. They're so very unlucky. They're so, right, everything is just, nothing's working out right.
Embodying blame.
Right. Or shame, and a lot of shame too.
Yeah.
At this stage, people don't experience thoughts or emotions or circumstances as events that are moving through their awareness. They experience them as identity. They hold on to them. For example, I am angry. I am anxious. I'm rejected. I'm stupid. I'm whatever, right?
Yeah.
There is no separation between that inner experience and your actual identity. And everything outside of you feels really personal all the time, right?
Yeah.
You know, everything personally. And again, just as you said, you interpret things as happening directly to you, both good and bad things. But we tend to have that negativity bias, as you like to remind us all the time. So it's more like we are always like we're interpreting things that feel unfair or threatening to us, or when someone challenges us, we feel like they're attacking us, or when they're trying to help us or coach us, we feel like they're attacking us. Right? You used an example in season 1 about one time you had a really bad performance review, and it was just like, these people are coming at me, man. I thought these people liked me. They're coming at me, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is there's very little psychological or spiritual distance between the thing that's happening and our response to it.
Yeah, it's almost like we surrender control over many of the things in our life that we do actually have control over.
Right.
Which is ironic because what we're seeking in this mentality is control.
False power, man. False power is a thing. And a lot of us, and this is kind of the interesting thing, you'll see a lot of quote unquote spiritually aware people who fall into this really badly because they spent so much of their time trying to heal, but they spent it bypassing, using spiritual language, philosophy, theology. They use it to bypass these important work, and they get stuck in this stage. They really, really do.
Well, and I think one of the big things is it's when we don't have to be responsible for our own lives, which is what a lot of people are giving up with this. If I don't have to be responsible for being where I'm at, and I can place this blame anywhere and everywhere else, then there's a certain gain we get from that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we don't have to be accountable with how we react. We don't have to be accountable with our shortcomings. We don't have to be accountable with making bad decisions.
Yeah. And when these emotional reactions happen, they become truth for us.
Yes.
We justify our anger. We justify allowing fear to control us, even if it's not real, right?
Yeah.
We get forced into a black and white state where we're just like, it's either this or this. We get stuck in these absolutes. And I'm telling you, there's nothing in this universe that's absolute.
Well, and I think...
As I say, nothing in this universe is absolute. I understand it's an absolute, but okay. We do paradoxes here too. That's also a thing.
But I think you bring up a really good point. I think in this phase of consciousness, which again, we can fluctuate down to, especially in very heated moments, we fuse with our emotions. We become one with them, and they dictate how we respond. They dictate how we perceive. They are governing forces in our lives instead of messengers. They become dictators.
I am is powerful. I am, right? The name of God, I am. So when you say, I am angry, I am fearful, I am this, I am that, you are literally identifying with something that is a part of you, but it is not you. And that's where we get really stuck. But we also you said blame earlier. Blame is something that we really, really take hold of too, because it'll dominate how we see things. Because as you said, ironically, we're trying to find more power, more control. And the more we do this, the more we're stuck in stage 1, our life actually feels like it's being controlled by everyone else. Right? And it's the circumstances that determine our identity. And this is where helplessness and defensiveness and stuff like that develop, because we haven't recognized our role in shaping these things, because we control 100% what happens on the inside. Very little what happens outside of us. People are people. Things are things. Nature is nature. It's going to keep flowing and waxing and waning, and it's just going to do stuff that we don't want it to do, and that's just the way it is. But we allow this stuff to shape our internal experience too, and we identify it. Validation becomes very critical here, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, even with validation being so critical, when these emotions take hold, we toss aside rationality and logic and reason. And we act compulsively based on the narrative that our mind starts spewing on us. And that validation that we seek in life, many of the things we get upset about is over perceived worth or perceived motives. We care so much about how the world views us, and it leads these emotions to have that much more power over us because it's that control, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And these types of folks, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but these types of folks are usually pretty obvious to spot, right? There is a ton of intensity, a ton of passion, a ton of energy. These types of folks usually have a very strong emotional presence and very, very, very strong opinions. And for them, their reactions are sincere. Whether it aligns with truth or not is a whole nother question, right? But their reactions are sincere, but they're also explosive, right? They're very immediate. If you do something or say something that they perceive as an insult or disrespect, even if it's not, and oftentimes it's not, it'll be bam, like just right out of the gate, right?
Yeah.
Because their shadow here is very reactive, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I think it's important to note here. I mean, even again, how we can fluctuate between these states, triggers, right? Triggers bring our consciousness down to this stage one. It is these primal parts of us activating, trying to bring us into this. I mean, it's our survival systems. Realistically, is what's being triggered, kicked on, and making us so just hostile. And there's people who live in this state,
Yeah.
but it's important to be mindful of our consciousness and where we're existing within it, especially during charged moments in our lives.
Yeah. A hard mind and a fixed attitude are poison. And that's where this is, right? The axiom about having a hardened mind and a fixed position is poison. And this, if we sit too long in this, we start to form victimhood, and we start to, everything outside of us becomes the reason we suffer. It's not our fault. We have no responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And their narratives become very fixed and very rigid. Their stories about this is just who I am, or what this is what always happens to me. Those things become true.
Yeah.
Not actually true, but true.
True to us.
Right. And growth is very limited, if at all, because there is no reflection at this stage. There is no reflection. There's no way to reflect, right? Because you're constantly fighting. You're constantly fighting. There's no space between again the stimulus and the response. So, and our show that we did, our last show we talked about awareness. We haven't created any distance in between these two things with our awareness yet. Not at this stage anyway.
You know, Allison and I were having this wonderful conversation last night about Schrodinger's cat. And I have been absolutely fascinated by the psychological concept of this.
Right.
So I'm starting to realize, and I am guilty of this myself in areas of my life, because again, this varies. We have different stages and different facets of our lives. And there's a level of people who are so dedicated to their belief systems that they had what I'm going to start coining as Schrodinger's cat syndrome. And it's that they don't want to open the box, because any facts, anything that could conflict with their worldview or reality would then make the realm of infinite possibilities go away.
Yeah.
And it's easier to live in this unknown space of chaos and superimpose belief systems onto the world than to have any refuting facts that may contradict their reality.
Yeah. That's exactly why I caution people to stay out of echo chambers. You know? Get yourself some friends who not tear you down, but challenge you. Challenge your ideas and challenge your beliefs. It's good for you. That's how they grow. That's how you know they're real. That's how you know that they're good for you, right? Is through challenge. So that's this kind of thing happens. And what's sad is, especially these days, with how digitally connected we are, we fall into this stage a lot in large groups nowadays, right? I know we're going to do a show about, we're going to kind of do a show focused on that in the coming weeks, but that's what happens. And this stage, life is happening to me. It can grow like a wildfire because people really default to this, as you said.
Yeah. Well, it's the tribalism because it's easier, especially when you end up in these echo chambers in groups, especially when they're very strong feeling in some way, shape, or form, that anything that you may think that is against the group can lead to being exiled from the tribe. And this isn't a conscious thing people think, but it is very intuitive. It is very much your systems knowing it is easier to align myself with a group than it is to.
Well,
But yeah, we have a whole episode coming up on this.
and sometimes they're literally thrown out of these groups, right?
Yeah.
Religious institutions are very, very famous for that. Do it this
Families
way.
in the modern day.
Families in the modern day with a lot of different lifestyles. Do it this way or else you're out. You're dead to me type thing, right? Being excommunicated at one point in our recent history was a big deal. It ruined your whole life. You know, having a different lifestyle could ruin your whole life depending on the kind of family unit you're in. So yeah, it isn't just imagined. This actually happens. This actually happens to people. We're seeing a form of this right now, kind of across the country. We won't get into that, but there's a lot of stage ones going on, is what I'll say.
Yep.
A lot of stage one stuff going on.
And just to state, this is a both side thing. So
Yes,
we're not
absolutely.
picking on any group in particular. This is happening across the board.
Well, because it's a very human thing, right? It's a very, very human thing. And we have to get past all this bullshit, these bullshit teams, red versus blue and cross versus pentagram or whatever. We have to get past that crap. Those are walls. We need to build bridges. And that's what we try to do. Build bridges, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. All the other stuff is just kind of surface level. I like these people better than these people. I get it. That's a real thing. But at the end of the day, we're all human, and these are very human problems that we all face, regardless of all the other stuff. Regardless of all the identity stuff, we all suffer from this. And it's better if we connect. It's better if we build these bridges to each other, and learn to live alongside each other. I know it's very cliche. I know, Justin, you sound very cliche right now. I know. Those old bumper stickers, what they used to say, coexist.
Yep.
Yeah. Look, I understand it's more complicated than that. I do. I promise you. But we can start building bridges to some of these things. And over time, there should be a bridge to everything. But we'll take it one step at a time. But stage one is, yes, you are right. I don't know if it's 85%, Michael, but it sure is a lot more than the other ones.
Yeah.
Because all we got to do is turn on the TV. All we got to do is walk outside and see that the vast majority of people are stuck in stage one. That's all I'll say.
Well, I think one important thing to note, and you brought this up a little bit earlier, is being in stage one isn't all negative.
No.
There is a benefit to it. Just to name a couple, I mean, in stage one, people have so much more intensity, so much more conviction, and like you said, passion. There is always a trade-off. When we surrender our power in any way, shape, or form, there is something we're getting out of it.
Right. Yeah. This is why, and this is not the topic of this show, but this idea just lends itself again to why the Unity Mind Code is so powerful. You know.
Yeah.
Emotion yet peace, right? Passion yet serenity, right?
I still remember when you introduced me to the code. It was one of the most powerful things I ever read because it's so true and it embodies both what we strive for, but also what makes us human. Because again, as we describe these things, don't make your goal to be, I'm going to ascend to stage 4 consciousness.
Right.
You got to understand your own humanity within all of this because, again, there are benefits to being at stage 1. Even being someone who is awakened and conscious, there are times you may need to have intensity and conviction, even when it may not be your normal realm of thinking.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because it's okay to be human, and we have to accept that. And if you went to stage guru without doing any of this hard, icky work, then you just bypassed a lot of stuff that will come back to you. It will come back to haunt you, I promise. And you'll wonder why you're having trouble with your relationships. You wonder why you're having trouble at work. You wonder why you're having trouble everywhere, because everywhere you go, there you are. You're bypassed healing, and
Yeah.
it will follow you. It will follow
Well,
you.
because there is a shadow side to this. When we're in this stage, we are very prone to reactivity, victimhood, and above all, rigid narratives. And they will drive us. And again, it is easy to fall out of the stages into these things. So it's important to be mindful of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, people do actually really suffer, and there are actual victims in the world. But we have to learn to develop awareness and an honest honest look at our inner state, because then that's when we can start to discern what is actually against us and what is not. And that's the kind of important part there, to create that space between what is perceived and what's actually happening, so that we can respond instead of react.
Beautifully said. So let's jump into stage 2. Enough about the doom and gloom, because stage 1 is a rough stage. This is when we move from life is happening to me to life is happening for me, or life is happening by me.
Yeah. I'm starting to steer the ship a little bit.
It's where we start getting into realizing our perception is what shapes our experience. Because there is no more powerful tool in our repertoire than perspective.
Yeah, there's an axiom that says our perception does what, Michael?
Creates our reality.
Creates our reality. And this is where we start to realize that. And we start to play around with this and dabble with this, right? Because we start to recognize that our perception does play a role in shaping our experience. And we start to realize that life no longer feels like everything's happening to us, and that everything outside of us, that we're being imposed by everything outside of us. We start to realize that our interpretation influences our reality also, right? You can start to observe your thoughts, like the exercise we did a couple of shows back. Or no, the last show, actually. In developing our awareness, we can now call thoughts a thought, right? We can start to call our feelings and emotions what they are. We can start to identify those things that upset us or trigger us into a reaction. So, you might say, man, I'm starting to notice when I get really defensive, when I probably shouldn't be, right? Or something you do a lot on this show, and it lends itself to your character. You'll say things like, I started to notice that I shut down when this happens. This is stage 2 thinking, right? This is stage 2 consciousness. What's kind of ironic is it's stage 2, but it's such a significant shift from stage 1, isn't it?
Yes. Especially because, you're with the shift in perspective, you allow yourself for things to become more complex and less absolute. It stops being so black and white, and it starts being, what are the underlying motives here? There's a podcaster I listen to a bunch, and he talks about this concept of when him and his wife get in an argument, it's like, it's not about the tea. Which means that often when we get in fights with people, arguments...
The tea? A different tea.
When we get in arguments about things, 9 out of 10, the argument has nothing to do with the perceived grievance.
Right.
It has to do with something deeper. And we start becoming aware of this. We start becoming much more involved in stepping outside of ourselves to get a better understanding of what's really going on. Because when we're not being reactive, we become curious.
Yeah. This is a stage where in our training, in the Ashla training, we start to call out paradoxes, right? Because this is where we can start to hold an understanding that two things can exist at the same time. Two seemingly opposite things can exist at the same time, or two people can experience the same event differently. And I would say that the Ashla student actually spends a good amount of time through their early parts of their training in stage 2, because it's really important that we start to open up and grow that vessel to hold these ideas and these understandings, because we must recognize that there are an infinite amount of perspectives that exist in this universe outside of our own, and that everybody is different in some way. We're connected, but we're also different. And this is where we start to reflect more and reflect deeper down, right? This is where the real shadow work starts to happen. This is where we both get excited, but we also go, oh shit, here we go. Because we start to see things that are coming up to the surface. But it's good because although this is the stage where you may start to notice your triggers and you'll react strongly for a moment. You learn to pause, you'll learn to do these things every so often, right? And then we have this reflection afterwards. We examine, we kind of talk to ourselves and figure out what happened afterwards. So
yeah. Well, and I think that's an important distinction too, because it's when we're in this stage, it's not that we're not still having these moments where stage one kicks on. Again, when stage one kicks on, it's easy to be pulled straight from stage 4 into stage 1. Crap, there's times it may be appropriate to do so. But stage 2 is where you're now having the awareness of it. And, we say on this podcast all the time, don't judge yourself, don't criticize yourself, accept yourself and these flaws as you're going through this work. And in the beginning, that's not always easy. A lot of the times, if you're new to stage 2, you're going to have some moments where you cringe, where you feel that like, oh man, I don't really like that about myself.
Right.
And that's totally normal because you learn more and more to give yourself compassion. But that is also one of these muscles you need to grow. To take time.
Yeah.
I know when I first started in this students' work, when I started looking at some of my patterns, man, there was times I was just like, oh, God, this needs addressed. This isn't okay.
Right. And this is why it's important to find yourself a good partner in your work, right?
Yes.
Because they can look at you and they understand that you're already going through it, so they have to kind of, help you through it without making it worse for you. Because the power of stage 2 is again perspective. Because you're growing your awareness, your self-awareness, and you're starting to dig a little deeper. And hopefully at some point in here, you start to become more curious about what's wrong with you or what you perceive as wrong with you, right? Curiosity over judgment. Hopefully someone can help guide you to be more curious about the things that make you tick so that you can start to take some responsibility for the stuff that happens inside of you. But you alluded to the shadow side of stage 2 is that you start to understand the patterns and you start to see the patterns, but we're still repeating them.
It's so true, though. And as you move through these stages, like this is still something that will be a part. And again, different phases in your life. Relationship, I feel I've gotten all the way to stage 4. Work, I'm still working on stage 2, stage 3. And it's not across the board. This is something that takes work in all areas of your life and at different paces. Right. I gotta work a lot more with my nervous system when I'm advocating for myself at work than when I'm telling my wife, hey, I'm staying up late tonight.
Yep. Yeah, welcome to Marriage 101, bro.
Yep. Well, I gotta be the man in the relationship at times. Stand my ground.
At times. Put your foot down, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. She's holding something sharp behind you. I'd be careful.
Something hot, at least.
Something
smells
hot.
So good, whatever she's cooking.
Got a nice big pot in her hand.
I know. But this is where, and we did a show about this, insight without integration is not mastery, right? It's not self-mastery. But at this stage, we're starting to find that insight, but we're not close to self-mastery yet because you can explain why you reacted to something. You can even analyze what it was that set you off. You can even trace it back to the root and say, wow. But in the moment, the reaction already took over because the space, so in stage 1, there is no space in between thing, stimulus, reaction, freaking out, right? There is no space anywhere in there. Stage 2 is where you start to create space, but you create it after the reaction, right? We're not quite to the point where we can pause yet. So, but it's important that we create that space, even if it's after the reaction, Michael, because it gives us a chance to reflect and see what the consequence of that is. That's how we grow. Because then if we're looking back at what happened, if we're at least giving ourselves space to reflect, then we can start to grow. Because we can start to take responsibility for that and accountability for what's happening inside of us.
Yeah. And this is really where a lot of the hardest work is done, because it is where you start training your nervous system. You know, it's like, I've been doing this work for a couple years now, and it wasn't until now that I'm now starting to put myself in uncomfortable situations intentionally, just so I can get my nervous system flared up and I can do something different.
Right.
Because that is the work. It is retraining yourself to behave differently in the situations that normally you would have your response to.
Right. Yeah. And for us at Ashla, this is an important stage for us to step into, right? We like to unfold. We don't like to just go from 1 to 4, and we can unconsciously sometimes, but it's better if we guide the ship here, because this is where we start to build humility. This is where we start to build that real honesty and integrity within ourselves. And that stuff's important because it lays that groundwork, that foundation for that much deeper and lasting transformation.
So let's jump into stage 3. Life is happening through me. And this is such a beautiful and powerful stage. And this is where you're really starting to take this awareness and turn it into action.
Yeah. Yeah. This is where you shift from insight to integration. This is where it marks that shift between awareness to that self-agency, to that governing frame of mind, right? At this point, you're not experiencing life as something that is just happening to us or even just shaped by us. We start to recognize that life is the universe is expressing itself through us at this point.
Perfectly said.
We choose our responses. We still have reactions forever and ever because we're humans, but the vast majority of things that we deal with and how we respond are choices at this point.
We're no longer restricted by limiting beliefs.
Right.
We're allowing ourselves to create, to build, to live fully and authentically, to make the most of the life we're given, because that's what stage 1 really is. The biggest loss of it is we lose the ability to build the best life we can. But through this, we can start building whatever we can dream. We can start putting action out there. It doesn't mean it's always going to bear fruit, but it means that we're going to be learning. It means we're going to be experiencing and making the most out of any given situation, good and bad.
Yeah. This is for a traveler of the path of Ashla. This is a very, very treacherous time sometimes, though, too, because this is where we start to develop our spiritual ego if we're not careful. Yep. Right? Because there is such a great leap from stage 1 to stage 2. If you're not careful, you can't even imagine stage 1 at this point. If you're here, right? Because it seems so far away. And that's how that spiritual ego gets built up. We right?
Well, I'd say even in turn, we start building walls to stage 1. Because again, I think we can fluctuate between these. But that spiritual ego is the defense mechanism we get because we don't want to be reactive. So we start... Right. Yeah.
Well, right, because we realize all this untapped agency and all this untapped power that was there all along. And now we get to choose the things in our life. I get stuck in stage 3 a lot. I have to bring myself down, not to a lower level per se, but I have to remember that because I'm a human being and I'm dealing with other human beings, that they may be at any point in these 4 stages. So I can't ever let myself forget that I was at stage 1 just 10 minutes ago, right? Because I could have been. Because once you realize that reality feels responsive to you in a way instead of oppressive, get this really inflated sense of superiority if you're not careful. This is where, when I'm training students, this is where we really start to make sure that they are in full swing of their shadow work, because we have to help them remain humble while they're going through this part. Because you get this taste of power, and it's like you got to slow it down, because this is where they want to start running as far away from stage 1 as they can.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
Because we're humans, circumstances will still come up, things that will trigger us and annoy us will still come up, emotions still move and flow, they don't go away. right? We're still
I would
challenged.
say they even flow even more because you're now able to sit with them.
Yeah, well, and we see them easier now, right? It's
Yep.
like, you know, it's the whole thing where people will always say, "Oh man, that never used to happen back in my day." You know, no, it did happen. You just don't hear about it. You didn't hear about it as much back then as you do now. Like we know everything, right? So it seems like everything's happening more, but all the things that bother us now were happening then. They just weren't happening. We just weren't aware of them. We wouldn't know. So this is kind of the double-edged sword of once you know, you can't unknow. You know, that's both a very powerful thing and a very horrible thing sometimes because once you know, you can't unknow. Once you learn, you can't unlearn it, right?
Yep.
So, but in this stage, again, this allows us to decide how we'll participate in what is unfolding, at least unfolding on the inside. Again, rarely can we change most of the things that happen outside of us because people have free will, right? People have their own agency. Even if they're not in control of their own free will, their own agency at that point, we still have no control over it. But this is where we start to create space, not after the reaction, but before it.
Well, I think another big defining feature of this is, and I think this might resonate with a lot of our viewers, is when you're in these earlier stages, you have this set of values you want to live by. And it's very hard for you to be able to go through life upholding to your values all the time. And I'm not saying not to. Like, that is definitely what we need. We need values, and we need to live by them. That is how we are wired as human beings. But we create so much shame in our lives when we fall short sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so the big distinction here is as you transition into the stage, your values begin to guide your decisions, which often when we live from especially a stage 1 consciousness, we don't really take into account our values into the decisions we make and the actions we take.
Right.
Or we hyper-moralize them and then we justify the fuck out of it. But
right. Yeah, but your identity becomes more flexible here.
Yeah.
Because you're not grasping at everything that comes in front of you and identifying with it. This is where people tend to start to build that very good emotional maturity, that emotional intelligence, right? It's where they start to actually affect the regulation of their nervous system because they're practicing things in real time at this point. It's not just this happened, I'm reflecting, or stage 1, this happened and I'm not doing any kind of reflection. We're putting a pause now, not perfectly, but we're putting a pause in between reaction more often than not at this point. So those other things start to kind of fall in alignment, right?
Yeah. Well, I think an important way to just look at this is this. We talk about how you had the pause in the last state. You start being able to reflect. This is where the pause starts becoming effective. It doesn't mean you're perfect,
right,
but it does mean you're able to not let your emotions dictate your actions or your reactions. Right. When something happens, you do have that pause. You're able to consciously be like, hold on. And then you're able to channel that and do logical, reasoned action during these reactive states.
Right, for the most part. Right, for the most part. But your presence there is way more important than getting it right all the time.
Yeah.
Right? It is. Because this is where you start to build ownership over your feelings and over your state of being. You stop saying things like they made me feel this way or she makes me so angry to this is how I reacted to that. This is how this is the feeling that I created based on whatever happened. Because and this is where it really starts to gain ground over the other two, pages 1 and 2, because it restores that sovereignty, that power without denying that you have emotions, without denying that you have things that annoy you to the point of reaction. This is the stage of alignment. This is where you will really start to see things, your growth taking shape, because you're starting to align all these different parts of yourself through this practice, through the work. Because they do, as you said, at this point start to reflect your principles and your character and the things you believe. And honestly, you realize that every time you throw a rock in a pond, there are ripples, and you take responsibility for those.
I mean, you just gain so much agency over your life because It's no longer up to anything but your own effort. It doesn't mean that there's not moments where you fall down. It doesn't mean that you succeed all the time. But it means that you have responsibility over what is going on in your world and the actions you take to course correct, develop, learn, and cultivate. The self-judgment dissolves because it's no longer about, oh, I'm a fuck up. It's, I messed up here. How can I improve?
Right, but there is a shadow side to this, and to a couple of things that you said, right? What are some shadows of this wonderful stage of consciousness?
Well, I think you brought up one of the most important ones, which is that spiritual ego. This is, you got to be cautious when what you're doing is for your benefit or to protect your peace in a way that is avoiding things that might make you feel uncomfortable or make you feel like you're regressing or may trigger you. Triggers are one of the greatest things you can have in your life because those are areas you can grow. Those are experiences that can challenge you and help you become better.
They're messengers. Hey, bro. Hello, right?
There's still work to be done.
There's always still work to be done. Don't get it messed up. Don't get it messed up, guru. There's always work to be done. Right?
Yep.
Because, and all of us, as we move through these stages in and out, but as we start to acquire a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience, it is easy to fall into this trap. I must remain calm and centered and enlightened or involved at all times. No, you don't, and you can't. You're a human being. You were a human being before you were a stage 3 consciousness.
Yep. What I think an important thing to reflect on, if you think you're in stage 3 right now, this is how you can tell you're moving into spiritual ego or being evolved. Do you feel superiority over those around you who are not on this path yet? Do you feel like these people just don't understand you or they're beneath you? And you don't phrase it like that in your head. I see a lot of these spiritual people out here who don't say these people are beneath me. But you can tell there's that air of, I am better than you. Because life is giving them abundance. Because they're starting to build the relationships that are super meaningful. But then they turn around and judge other people. That is not enlightenment. That is spiritual ego.
Yeah. Or the so-called gurus that will tell you that my way is the only way. You cannot heal without me. And if I die, you're all screwed type of thing.
Yeah.
Right? But there's also the shadow of overdoing it, overworking. And because you start to feel this pressure to always respond perfectly all the time to everything, as if you were Jesus himself. And I can tell you that I have yet to meet a person who could naturally do that without looking like they were breaking themselves in half just to do it. Right? Presence over perfection. Say it with me, everybody. Presence over perfection. A person in stage 3 that is working through healthy healing, a healthy growth, will always prioritize being present versus being perfect. And because you just break yourself in half trying to do it. And then your growth just becomes a performance. You actually stop growing. You're just now performing. And your discipline turns into some really nasty self-judgment too if you're not careful.
Yeah.
But the most important thing for stage 3, and this is something that I taught you, right, is to honor that space that you're starting to create before the reaction so that you can create a response. And don't try to be perfect, Michael. Just do your best, show up, be present, and then also give yourself that space to reflect. Not to judge, but to reflect.
Exactly. So let's get into the exciting stage. Stage 4. Life is happening as me.
Life is me, right?
Life is me, yes.
So those of us who believe in the power of interconnectedness, this is where we try to get to. This is where we want to be, right? This is the flow state for us, right? Because this is where we believe we find the ultimate freedom. Because this is where we integrate. This is where we embody all these pretty things we talk about. all these very, very poetic and philosophical things, right? At this stage, we understand that connection is heaven and disconnection is hell on earth. This constant sense of me versus life kind of goes away. Maybe not completely, but it goes away, right? Because resisting everything is no longer our default posture to life. We don't really swim in those waters anymore at this point, because we understand that experience is not something that happens against us, and it's not something we must constantly manage all the time. It's something unfolding within the unknown, the things we can't see or control sometimes.
Beautifully said. I think another important aspect to this is the connectedness to all things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most beautiful ways I picture this is we see ourselves in every living being, whoever they are.
Yeah.
No matter how dark or corrupt, we see the light of humanity within each person and the experiences that formed who we are seeing. It is understanding the beauty inherent in all things, both good and bad, because good and bad cease to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Things just are.
Yes.
We no longer have to define things. We no longer have to put things into categories. We no longer feel the need to fight the flow of existence itself, but accept it in its unfolding because we know that it is creation's effort to build something far greater than we can understand, and that we are just a part of this flow and only doing the best we can within it.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. This is also the part where it is very important to have a good teacher, a good mentor, a good support system, because when we go into this work of learning that all things are connected, it sounds very much at home. It sounds very compelling to us even at the beginning, even at stage one, because we feel that innately within us, intuitively, right? We know that is the truth. We just can't see it, or we can't feel it, or we can't yet explain it, right? But there is something important to remember as a mentor, as a teacher, as somebody guiding someone through a path like this. And I'm guilty of this. I've been guilty of this before, where I see their eagerness and I want to just bring them here right now to this understanding. And when you do that, or if you're on a solo path and you're studying this on your own without a teacher, you want to get to this because, again, this is where we feel like we are connected, we are aligned, we are at home, right? It feels perfect within us. It's almost like nirvana, right? But if we don't make our students go through the work, or at least try to steer them to do the work, or if we solo practitioners just jump to this, then we're bypassing a lot of stuff that we need. So this is this is the goal, right? This is where we hope to get to, and we can get to it and stay there longer at times with the work, though, right? We can get here. We have these epiphanies. We have these things that happen in our meditations, these things. If you're sitting in a church and you hear a scripture that just lights you up, right? Yep. You know, the Holy Spirit is in you. Those can happen no matter if you've done work or not. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen, because it does. But we have to remember the goal is to get to this stage and be able to maintain that, not manage it, not control it, but sit in this flow state for as long as we can, but also to not attach ourselves to that, Michael, because we're not always, as humans, going to be able to maintain that flow state all the time.
Life happens.
It does. It does. But this is, like you said, this is the place that we want to be, because this is where we are at our most natural state. Where in stage one, paradox seems like cruel and evil. In stage two, we start to be able to see the paradoxes and start to study those. Like, wait a minute, these things are different. They can't live together. They can't be together. Stage three is where we start to look at paradox and go, yeah, it's kind of weird that these two opposite things can coexist, but they do. And I'm okay with it. I accept it, right? Stage four, paradox is gone. It's gone. Things just are, right? They just are. And it's an amazing place to be.
Yeah, it's like we no longer need to articulate things.
Yes.
We no longer need
Oh,
to
yes.
grasp into certainty of understanding. We
Right.
just allow things to be. And
Yeah.
it's so powerful because it frees up all our energy to just create, to build,
Yeah.
to heal, not just ourselves, but the world. There is nothing more powerful in the world. And this doesn't mean you have to be a speaker. Nothing more powerful than someone sitting in this seat. And again, you don't have to be a speaker. You don't have to be someone who is actively working with people. Your presence will inspire people.
Yes. Yes. In the way of Ashla, this is where you would transcend towards the end of your training, right? Or, well, let me rephrase that, because training never stops. But we have 9 levels of movement through what we call 9 levels of movement through the Force. And this is when you get to stage 4 and you start to be able to sit in that flow state for much longer times, right? Even in your waking life, it doesn't, not just meditation, not just prayer, not just any of that, but in your day-to-day life, when you can sit in this flow state for longer and longer periods of time, we call that effortless action, right? And it's the goal. It is really the goal. But we also remember and we understand that we can't, again, maintain this forever. We can't maintain this for, days and weeks and months, because life happens. Things happen. We get sick sometimes. We lose our jobs, or a relationship breaks down. No matter how good it seemed to be, things happen in life. But this stage also identifies another pitfall for those of you who are mentors to others and mentors to students, or if you are a solo practitioner, because this is where your stage 1 or stage 2 students will see you, and they'll be so confused by your simple nature. And you and I've talked about this many times, and I know it annoys Heather to death, but these days I can stay in this level, in this flow for much longer periods of time than she can, right? And then a lot of people around me can. And I'm not bragging or anything. It's just the way it is. But the more I've done that, the more effortless action I have applied to my being, the more simple things, the more simple my reactions, right? The more simple my words, the more simple stage
Life
1, 2,
is-
and 3. Stage 1, 2, and 3, I was very philosophical all the time. I was just trying to over-explain and all these and sound really smart and all this stuff. But the more you progress, the more simple you get. And when your students see this, it can create a kind of a tension between them, because it almost feels like a disconnect. Is this making any sense to you? It almost feels like a disconnect, right? Because I know you and I had moments where you would have this very complex problem or a very complex thing. And I would say to you, Michael, okay, let's talk about it. And you would go through this thing, and you would go through all this, and all this stuff's coming up. And I would just give you like a, 8 or 10 word answer. And you would just look at me like my brain fell out of my face,
Used to frustrate the hell out of me.
Well,
That bundled
and
with no opinions, my God.
Well, and you know what? That's on me, right? Because I have to remember, again, as I said for stage 3, we have to remember that you said it, we fluctuate no matter how grown or how healed or how whatever evolved you get, we are humans, we still go through these things. And it's really important for those who are mentoring people to remember that, yes, flow state is the goal. Flow state is where I want you to be, Michael. But I have to remember that when it calls for it, I got to kind of not lower my vibration, not lower myself, but remember to be able to meet you where you're at. And sometimes if we're not careful, we can get stuck in this flow state because we don't want to leave it. You always hear these stories of people who have these near-death experiences, right? And they are in whatever beautiful place that they describe, and they never want to leave. They're like, nope, I'm not going back. I don't care who needs me. I'm not going back. I'm not going back for nothing, man. I love being here. And that's where we have to that's kind of the idea we have to remember here, is that, yes, we're here and it's awesome. And this is a good place for us to mentor and teach from. But we have to be able to step into those understandings that this is where they're at. And I can't encourage them through my example to spiritually bypass these things, right? And that was a really long way to explain what I was trying to say, but I think you guys get what I meant. That certainly was not a simple explanation, Master Justin, right? But yeah, I'll let you talk now.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. It's when we're in this stage, it's easy. I mean, and honestly, in any of these stages, it can be hard not to remember that other people are in different stages.
Right.
And with that, the pull gets stronger at each level to want to just bring everybody up here. And you can't force people into awareness. You can't force people into regulation.
Right.
You can't give people the answers. Like, one of the things that has perplexed me about working with you and hearing a lot, working with other people, is true spiritual leaders do not give people answers.
Right.
And it's really freaking annoying, because when people come to spiritual leaders, they want freaking answers.
Right.
That answers don't give enlightenment. Answers bypass people's responsibility.
Exactly.
And
If there were a wise man on a hill somewhere, I would never want to talk to him. I don't want them to tell me the answer. Right?
yeah. Well, and again, when we're at this stage, when we are working with other people, that awareness of understanding, people need to come to their own conclusions. People need to come to their own decisions. If you give someone an answer, the lesson will not be learned.
However, we have to be careful here when choosing a teacher or a mentor or a guru or whatever you call your spiritual leaders. Although, Michael, I would not always give you the answer. Sometimes I would, because sometimes it wouldn't help you bypass something. But if I didn't have an answer for you, I did point on the map where you need to look. Or
Yes.
I did give you tools, because ultimately at the end of the day, I don't need you completely dependent on me to grow. You must grow, right? What if something what if something would have happened to me, and now if everything you were growing from is now gone? Now you have to start
Where did my
over.
magic 8-ball go?
Well, and we see this a lot, man. We see people so dependent on their particular spiritual leaders who have really created dependency on them, and things go bad, or the leader rejects them, or, like we talked about, throws them out, excommunicates them. They have to start the work all over again, and start it from an even more painful place. So, as you and I continue day after day, and we talk about the kind of communities the community you and I want to build, something that I'm always very, very passionate about is to make sure that, yes, my teachings are important to this community, right? We must always remember before that this is meant to be a living thing, a growing thing. There should be no dependency on me, because if I'm doing my job, I have given you the tools, and I've shown you where on the map you need to start learning from or walking from, right? Because I can't always walk the path with you. At times I can, and at times I do, but not always, right? Some missions are solo, man, So I think this kind of brings to mind that we need to do a show. I need to do another show again on, I wrote something a long time ago called The Masters of Bullshit, and I think we're going to do a show about that here.
I remember you telling me this. Let's do it.
Yeah. We're going to, because now's the time, I think. Because we need to make sure that especially as we're helping folks through these things, it's important for them to, because all these things are important, right? But we also have to make sure that they're building a good support system around themselves too, because that is a very vital thing, because connection is the goal. And if you're connecting with people that aren't good for you, right, this can be very bad, very, very bad.
So when it comes down to stage 4, there is a lot of power that comes from this stage. You feel freedom, you get stability, the depth is endless. But there is a shadow side to this, even at this higher state. And it's one of the most important things we have to watch for. And that is detachment. Because when we are in a place where we are one with everything, where we trust the universe, It is easy to give it all to the universe and just remove our own personal responsibility within our own lives and to those in our lives to make that impact to help the world become a better place.
Yeah. Yeah. This is where the basics are most important, ironically, right?
I think that's
In
partially
our,
why the last step within your stages is to become a student again.
that's absolutely right, right? You know, in the way of Ashla, once you become a quote unquote master, the next step is to become the forever student, to go back to basics, because grounding at this stage is the most important thing that you can do. You must stay grounded, and it will be very difficult to stay grounded here, right? Because as you said, man, there is a sense of freedom that I can't even explain to you, right? And grounding is very, very important here. So that's why we always have to, as we get to the so-called end of our path, an end of our training, if there ever actually was an end, which there, I don't believe there is, at least not through us, right? Our path doesn't have an ending. You just become the student again, but you're becoming a student from a different perspective now. You'll still go back through all this stuff. You'll still go back through the 9 levels of movement through the Force, because it's important to, the more you know, the more you learn, the more you integrate, the more power you accumulate, you must return back to those basics. Not only so you can teach them, right? And teach them from a good place, but so that you don't float off into space.
Yeah.
You got to stay grounded, because that is the shadow side of this, right? You drift away, and you said it beautifully. You drift away towards detachment, and yeah, but Justin, you always say attachment's bad. No, there's healthy attachment, and then there's unhealthy attachment. Go find that episode back in season 1, because we did a whole show about that, right?
Yeah.
But connection is the natural state of all things in this universe, alive and not alive. So, and if you're a true mystic, your goal is to connect with Godhead, God, creation, as close as you possibly can. And if that is your goal, then you must try to connect as fully as you can. So detachment is not good either. There's balance, Michael. Balance to all things.
Yep. Exactly. Do you have any final thoughts before we move on to exercises and affirmations?
I think we covered it. I think we covered it pretty good. I don't want to beat some of these things to death. I think we did well. I would just, I think I'll just leave everybody with a blessing today, if you don't mind.
No, please go right ahead.
Because really, there's a lot of insight here, but really it's in the integration that's going to be most important. So, but my call to action is always make sure you subscribe or share this with people who you feel like might need it, and be curious when you're doing this work. Be curious and not judgmental. I think that's going to be the probably the best tool you can bring with you. So, and my blessing for you guys is this: may you have the courage to see where you are without judgment. May you recognize when life feels like it's happening to you and meet that place with honesty, because that's important. May you grow in awareness of how your perception shapes your experience, because it does shape your reality. May you learn to pause before reacting, and may you reflect after, right? May your resistance to things soften. May your defensiveness loosen. May separation give way to understanding. When stress pulls you backward, may you return gently. When insight awakens, may you return humbly. When peace stabilizes, may you stay grounded. May you not rush your development. May you not perform your growth. And may you simply just become more conscious, moment by moment. Be present. Let life unfold as you. That's the goal, Michael. Letting life unfold as us, right? That's what I got for you guys today.
Love it. It's important going through this that these stages are fluid. You can be in life is happening through me in your relationship, and life is happening to me in your finances. Stress can pull you back, but practice stabilizes you forward. This is not a ladder, it's a spectrum of identification. The goal isn't to skip stages, it's to recognize where you're perceiving from, where your awareness is, where your spirit is. So, for my exercise for you today, I want you to just make a list of all the areas in your life that are important to you. Relationship, work, friendships, finances. And then ask yourself, where is your perception in these stages? And just write it down and ask yourself, what is it that is keeping you stuck in this stage? Is it actionable steps? Is it a fear of follow through? Is it something within your own belief system that is holding you back from taking the next step? For affirmations today, I am not my thoughts. I can observe them. I can create space between emotion and action. I choose alignment over reaction. My awareness is growing every time I pause. And I can let life move through me instead of resisting it. For our journaling prompt today, identify one current challenge in your life. Write about it from each stage. If life is happening to me, how do I interpret the situation? If life is happening by me, how might my perception be shaping this? If life is happening through me, what choice do I have right now to change this? And if life is happening as me, what lesson or integration is emerging? Notice how the emotional tone shifts as perception shifts, and you'll start to find your power. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope you got a lot out of this episode, and it would really mean a lot to us if you would subscribe, if you're a frequent listener, if you share it with someone you think this could impact. And check us out on all the major platforms. We got the shorts on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. We're on YouTube for our long form, as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to check out the best website ever, newashler.com. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucem.
Ad Lucem.